Welcome, and thank you for joining us for today's MDM webcast, How to Help Your Sales Team Execute Price Changes Successfully. Our 60-minute program today is sponsored by Insight to Profit. My name is Janelle Stelton-Holtmeyer, editor of Modern Distribution Management and website mdm.com, and I have the pleasure today of moderating the program. When it comes to implementing price changes, it can be easy to come up with a grand plan, but getting everyone on board with that plan can be a real challenge. In our program today, we're going to be looking at some of the best practices for getting your sales organization aligned with your pricing goals. But first, a few brief housekeeping notes. If you'd like to access the handouts for today's program, please visit www.mdm.com/slides and download them now. Or email us at info@mdm.com and we will send them to you as a PDF attachment. Our program is being recorded today, and we will be sending you a follow-up link to this recording to share it with your colleagues or to listen to again. I do encourage questions today. In the interest of time, we won't be taking them by phone, but please use the chat function at the bottom left of your screen to ask a question at any time or if you are experiencing any technical issues. Simply type your questions into the chat window at the very bottom left of your screen and hit the Enter key. Finally, you can make the slides larger and view our presentation today in full screen mode by clicking the button at the top right of your screen that says Full Screen. You can return to the normal size by hitting your Escape key. So let's get started. I'm delighted to introduce our speaker today. Ryan White is the founder and managing partner of Insight to Profit, a pricing and technology firm focused on manufacturing and distribution clients. With 20 years of experience, Ryan applies his passion, drive, and vision to help B2B companies gain sustainable profit growth through pricing and profit strategies. He has experienced firsthand how operational effectiveness, supply chain efficiency, and customer and internal behavior impact profitability. He now works closely with C-level executives at both Fortune 500 companies and private equity firms to engage their organizations and deliver bottom-line profit. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you, Janelle. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to call in today. We're hoping to give you a little insight into one of the most important topics when you talk about pricing in an organization is how to get the sales team really engaging. So I'm going to go through a number of slides, and as Janelle mentioned, I welcome any questions you'd like at the end. I'm hoping to leave plenty of time for that as we go through this today. So as Janelle spoke about, we're a business that's focusing on this topic called pricing in the B2B space. And what we're going to talk about today is how to use both tools, measurement, identify opportunities, and how, most importantly, implement those changes and drive change management so you achieve the profit that your business has the potential to earn. Just real quickly, like Janelle spoke about, we are in this space. So we have resources here in the US and Europe, and we are focused on industrial manufacturing distribution companies. So many of you are similar businesses where we've done this many times, and we think the real differentiation is about how we engage the rest of the organization, and that's what we're going to share today. So hopefully most of you know the leverage of price, right? So this is a real client example where it was about a $100 million business, and a 2% gain is about what we're going to be talking about today. How can we achieve 2% more than we would have achieved if we didn't undertake this initiative? And the power of price, as you probably recognize, is that 2% gain, that $2 million of top line, has no incremental cost and then flows down all the way to the bottom line of the business. Therefore, often providing 20, 30, 40% gains to the bottom line with small improvements to the top line. And so now we're going to talk about the most important driver to make that happen. So the challenge that we're speaking about is often businesses decide what they're going to go to market with, and they're going to try to get a 4% price increase or a different price increase. And what we're going to talk about is how to know what you actually achieved and how to get the most possible lift you can. So on the right-hand side here is an example where we had a client who over the period of about a year and a half needed to implement 2 different price increases. This distributor had their manufacturers on a weighted basis targeting about 4% in October, and then the following year about 4.3% in July was what their cost increases were doing. and what the market was believing what the market prices were changing by. But as you can see, the blue line, which they didn't have visibility to, we're going to talk about why it's so important to actually know what you're actually achieving, is that in quarter one when they announced the 4%, they got a lift partially the way up. But obviously to get the price increase it takes time. So in quarter two it was a little bit more, and even some more in quarter three. But in most companies aren't able to maintain those gains, and it starts trending back down. And then you can see in the following increase, they ended up getting a lift again, but only about half of what they had targeted. So in our experience of hundreds of these types of engagements, what we find, and would be interested for you guys to look into, is that companies are typically achieving 40 to 60% of what they believe they went to market with, what they're actually netting. And that number typically hits a high point about 2 quarters after the implementation and then trends down. And we believe the key to that pattern, the key to not achieving as much as we had targeted or hoped for, and to maintain those gains, is actually engaging the sales team through 4 phases of involvement. Not only does this impact your bottom line, the other challenge with this is now your customers believe they received a 4% increase, or in this example, a combination of 8.3% over the course of 18 months. So they believe that their prices raised that much when they in essence only raised about half that much. So that even gives you more market pressure the next time you have to go to market, they feel like you're already raising more than you had said. So these 4 phases we're going to talk about one at a time is what we call educate, give the sales team information about their business. This isn't generic. We're going to talk about real data, real information about your business. Then we're going to use engage. Many people in engage, this would be a corporate role or a pricing team or a finance role that would be about modeling what are we going to target. And we're going to talk about why it's so important to engage some senior folks on the sales side to actually be part of that process and determine how you're going to go about the price increase. Then in train, we're going to talk about how we go to the broader team and get them engaged before the rollout of how to communicate, how to train them, how to practice the conversations they need to have. And finally, in measure, we're going to talk about why it's so important to actually look at the results you are actually achieving and paying attention to the details of what's going on, because there's always places we have leaks, and there's always some sales people that don't get involved no matter how well you do the educate, engage, and train. So let's start with educate, which is giving the sales reps the right information. So here's a colorful slide that what we did for one client was we simply went out and talked to a bunch of the client's customers. And you can do this in all different ways, including blind, so that's not biased. But what we find is business after business after business, if you just ask the team, they believe that the competition is just as good in whatever the criteria is, customer service or quality or brand. And what you find is that there's probably areas of strength and areas that are more on par with the competition. But the internal people, because they're always told the negative parts, always have a bias towards their even with the competition, even in the places they're stronger. So the power here is to go get some external voice. It doesn't even have to be formal. And just talk to customers and get quotes and have conversations about how they compare on criteria. And this is the kind of evidence that is used to start trying to build the foundation that there are differences between your business and your competition. The other idea that we do often in this spot of educate is just ask the reps which areas are we strong, what regions of the country, which products, which different things. There's going to be a number of areas that they would mostly agree to, right, the right leaders, that you have strengths. And so what you want to do is you want to ask that, record it, and then show in the pricing strategy that we're actually leveraging those drivers to make a differentiated approach of using your strengths. The next area under educate that we'd want to talk about is right here on the right-hand side is a business we had that was able to maintain their pricing pretty flat over a time period where their costs were fairly flat. But what we do is we come up with external drivers, no matter if it's freight cost, no matter if it's, in this case, CPI. Give them evidence, give them statistics about places where the trends in the marketplace, that is not just their word saying, hey, it's the manufacturer. Of course we want to use manufacturer support to push through price increases, but we also want to have other drivers that give confidence to the reps that we're doing the right thing, and that in general cost of living goes up more than just the manufacturers, and have evidence that they can provide to the customer of why it makes sense to support the price increase. The next area in educate is just, we call it a scatter. This is a simple chart that probably many of you have thought about before, maybe not represented this way. So on the left-hand side is the relative price, and each dot's a customer. So the dots in the lower left-hand corner are low-priced customers. The dots in the top are high-priced customers relative to their peers. And the x-axis is just small customers on the left, large customers on the right. And this is a very common pattern we see. And what happens is the scatter gets tighter on the right and wider on the left. And by using real data with real customers, and we'll show you an example of that next, the sales team really gets surprised by how much variation there is in the marketplace and the risk associated with having these dots in the lower left. For example, larger customer buys a smaller customer. Now what position are we in? The competition gets hold of these lower left-hand corner prices that are very low, and how does that drive the market dynamics in that? So what we want to do is we want to show the real data. Go and help the rep realize at a rep level. So this is one rep. This is their customers, again, revenue across the bottom. In this case we used a margin example, margin differences for similar product. And we saw, look at the amount of variation that's taking place between the customers. And a graphical representation of real data that's not theory and their data, we found is a very powerful tool to get them to react that we know we need to do something different than applying the same price increase to all these dots. What we're going to do now is we're going to help them realize the power of differentiation. So the next topic is it's not always about the price. It's not always about the price increase. Let's talk to the team. Often businesses are less sensitive to other changes. So there might be, you might already have freight policies or expedite policies that you may or not be charging. So what are policies or what are areas of what we call a pocket price or a waterfall that we could improve upon, maybe even get leverage that our customers feel like we're easy to do business with, and still get a financial lift without the pressure of needing to go to the market with a price change. So here's a client we had. And on the left-hand side of this waterfall you can see that if they charged every customer the theoretical list price or the DN that they thought they were charging, then it would be a $328 million business. Everyone knew that we were giving different types of discounts, but the power of going to the sales team and actually showing them the size and magnitude of the different discounts that were being provided and who was receiving them to not only get to a kind of a net price, then all the way to what we call a pocket price when you take into account marketing and freight and other elements, was powerful because now the spread between customers was much greater, and we could discuss with the sales reps which of these items the customers really cared about and which ones there might be opportunities to over time change the approach that we had and drive behavior while getting a lift and not have to necessarily press a price increase through. So when we talk about the rest of this topic today, what we'd say is half the time it's about how do we optimize the right price changes over time, and then how do we also, what other elements are there to achieve opportunities so that our pocket price goes up without necessarily needing to push through price changes in the market. So here's just an example, one approach you might take. We just have a list of a number of different areas that seem to be opportunities across many of our distributing clients. And what we do is we figure out, hey, the ones in red actually apply to this business, And then we take those and we narrow it down to 2 or 3 that really will have an opportunity in the business. And again, let the reps have influence. So provide them the data, provide them the magnitude, provide them the frequency, and they'll very quickly say, hey, don't touch freight, very sensitive, or don't touch MOQ, but maybe over here, here's some areas where we might be able to do something that has a lift. So again, give them choices and give them the data, and maybe just guide them to the areas that we think have the most opportunity. So that was how we handled educate, using real data, showing the clients, even if they have had 20 or 30 years experience in a business, over and over and over we find that they don't realize the amount of variation and the amount of dollars being discounted. So the next area is, how do you engage your reps to actually model or target a differentiated price increase rather than just telling them how much it should be? So what we're saying is that they're going to be nervous no matter what that we're going to cause loss of business. But they almost always realize that a price change needs to take place. The manufacturer is raising prices anyways, or some other dynamic in the marketplace is happening. So how do we get them to not have this fear of losing business and yet support the need that we all agree that we have to do something different in the market? And what we're suggesting is you pick a few reps, maybe a sales manager or 2, that really have the organization has confidence in, and you have them engaged in the process of how we target the price increase. Be upfront with them and transparent. So we sit down with them on the left-hand side and we determine what are the drivers. How should we differentiate? Instead of going 4% across the board, how do we minimize risk and achieve more impact by differentiating the increase by product, by customer, or maybe even who we're competing against or what other market forces are taking place. Then in the middle we build a model. We do analytics. We build a model that gives the guidance that the business is needing to actually be successful. Price floors, our strategy, our go-to-market. An example of this would be we had a client on the left-hand side, let me explain this to you, where we just simply asked them, categorize every customer and product into an A, B, C, D, or E. And what this means is, on the left-hand side, the profit is we all realize that we've got to find this optimal price point in the middle to get the right volume to maximize our profit. Everybody sees that. So point D would be an optimal price point in the marketplace. We're getting the right amount of volume and therefore the right amount of profit. If we have lower prices, then we're not gaining enough volume on ABC to optimize profit. We're not going to gain any more volume, right? And therefore we're not optimizing profit. Point E means our price has gone too far. We're losing more volume than we're making up for in price, and therefore we're lower than our optimized profit. So the key question is something that's this simple. How do you come up with it? So this client came up with 4 factors, again, working with the sales team. They said product classification, and these would all be customized to your business, meaning if it's an engineered product, I'm going to be less sensitive on it than if I'm something consumable that people see and use all the time. So what we're going to do is we're going to score engineered one way and consumable another way. In this example, just for simplicity, I said so engineered would get points for being an A item, consumables would be a D item, meaning more or less sensitive. The next factor that this business said is if I have many customers buying just a few units, it's probably not that sensitive. But if I have few customers buying all my volume and they buy a lot of units, then I'm probably a lot more sensitive on price change. It's a lot more risk for me. The relative price point is if I have a customer that's very low compared to their peer group, remember that scatter, then I want to be more aggressive there because they probably can't get that good a deal in the marketplace, most likely. If I have a customer that has a very high price point compared to their peer group, I want to be conservative. I don't want to push for a price change. And finally, this client said if that customer is trending in volume, if we're really growing rapidly in that customer product, then we might have some opportunities to visit versus a customer product that's really declining and we think we're losing share. So what we did is take those simple 4 factors and come up with a very basic model to say in each opportunity, if we're going for a 4% price increase, A might be 6, D might be 3, and E might be -2, and come up with a different differentiation of increase across the spectrum. So this is what that might look like. So this is a scatter. On the left-hand side is how much revenue for this particular rep's business. So this rep, we were targeting something like a 4% price increase. What we found is through using their input on that kind of drivers we just showed, is that some places we thought we could get 5 and be comfortable and take low risk. In some places were 2 or 0 or even less than 0. But we differentiated the price increase and made them feel empowered on that. And now we see that we're not just doing a peanut butter spread, and they feel much more comfortable that we're taking the risk in the appropriate way. And now we can achieve more lift. So what that turns out to being, and we use a technology, but you could do this in many different ways, is for that particular rep, in this case John Smith, you should see in the middle of the screen, for his client ABC Chemicals, here's the different items that they buy, their revenue over that time period, the volume that they purchased, and he could change that volume if he thinks it's going up or down to understand the impact. But you see on the middle of the screen the current price and the recommended price. So the model would suggest that this business, this customer is getting about a 6% price increase, so a pretty strong price increase on this when the manufacturer was targeting that. And we let the rep, even at that level, decide, hey, I'm going to go a little bit less on the one that they buy most often, and I'm going to be more aggressive and make that up in the end on the products they buy least often. So even down to the customer product level, corporate can't tell where the risks are. What we can do is we can give a budget to the rep and let them drive the price increase the way they feel the most risk profile is, the best place forward. And now we still hold them to the overall impact, but we let them refine so they actually feel buy-in, confident, and accountable to the results. That's what we mean by engage the reps. Another example is we would suggest a lot of distributors too often just go with the increase the manufacturer has. So in this example, I used common names of manufacturers that a lot of our distributors use. And the manufacturer, in this case Eaton, announced a 5% price increase. And in the past, when we audited them, they got 3.8% of the 5. You can see Parker, they got 2.8 of 4. So the percentage of what they actually achieved, and this client was better than average, was here in the middle, yet their cost often went up the 3% or 5% that the manufacturer announced. So what we're suggesting is certain manufacturers, maybe even on certain products, you can increase the price more than the manufacturer might have done on the tail, or certain products where you can still use the 5% announcement from the manufacturer, but the way that we differentiate the price increase, the weighted average to the marketplace might be more. And now we can actually target more than the manufacturer, and with the rep's buy-in, we'll realize a higher percentage of that. So we often are going to realize 80 or 90% of what we targeted rather than 40 or 60. Okay? So one of the biggest opportunities that distributors leave on the table is just following the manufacturer. We'd suggest at times certain manufacturers on certain products, you're going to be able to go for more than what they announced and do it behind the scenes in a smart way and achieve more. So that's how we do engage. And that was on a select group of reps and how we get them part of the process. And now we're going to talk about how we train the organization. And if somebody was going to ask me the area that we get the most pushback on, it would be this. Because normally sales teams say, I know what I'm doing. I have communications. I have relationships. You don't need to train me on our value proposition or how to communicate price. And what we'd suggest is this is where you need to spend the most time and make it happen. It's critical. So the purchasing team that they're often going against, or the buyers that they're going against, is going to training, and they wake up every morning and they talk about how to get a better deal from you. We need to arm the sales team with those same skills to balance the scales of how we interact with purchasing, because they're always going to tell us that we're too high. They're always going to have reasons why they might move the business. And we need to be able to actually articulate those value propositions and things ahead of time. So again, practice communications, and we'd say this is the single largest opportunity for businesses because they all believe that they already do this fairly well when you ask the sales team. And so let me give you some examples of how we would do that. One simple example is either your procurement team or another procurement team. We bring them in the room and we have procurement talk to the sales team about what is procurement strategy? What are the things they're going to bring up? How would they say, if we go to them with a 4% price increase, what are they going to say? What strategies, what approaches, how do they get measured? It's usually a very engaging and exciting thing to bring in those folks and hear the other end of the table about what their strategies are. The next thing is where we get the pushback. We want role playing. We find that folks in the industry aren't used to talking about price or value real naturally. So they might have a line or two and say that we're the best, we have the best service, or hey John, we have a good relationship. But as soon as they get pushback, they concede price. And what we want them to do is practice role playing with each other, watch different strategies each other have, build each other's up, and normally they're quite nervous, they're quite off in the beginning, and after doing it once or twice in a day, they actually realize the opportunity it provides them to get better at this. And then we have a series of different discussions and times where they practice this until the point they get comfortable having conversations about price. So let me give you an example. We might give them a little cheat sheet that says, hey, when you get pushback, here's some things in green that you can provide. Often the rep off the top of their head will know one or two of these, but as soon as those don't apply to the client or it doesn't work, they run out of ways to come back and allow the procurement, allow your customer's customer feel like they got to win. So this is all about how do we still get the price increase, but yet feel like the customer's customer still got a win. And so give them and let them practice different approaches, negotiating strategies, and have kind of almost an order. Here's the stuff that we want you to lead with about how to give back in a way. We also might give them other things that we say, hey, we only are going to do these things if you really need to. But just simply writing them down and having the reps come up with these themselves and giving them input of which ones are the most expensive things to the business, which ones have an impact on the market, and which ones are things that we just think are good decisions, is a big benefit to their confidence and their empowerment when they're with the customer. The next thing in train is really helping the marketplace understand why this is happening and helping them communicate that. So for example, we always want to use some type of customer communication or letter. Not always, but often, right? There needs to be some kind of way that we're all saying what are the drivers, what is the timing, what is the platform of why these prices are changing. And we do things like help the reps, hey, here's 2 weeks ahead of time, call all your customers and let them know that they're valued, that this is coming, there's more details ahead, but I'm calling you to talk to you about it, and once the letter comes out, then I'm going to schedule a time to come out. These little things of managing your customer and building relationships are often lost when people are forced or hurried or don't take the time or discipline to do it right. The next thing is you're going to get questions. You're going to get challenges. Your reps know what those are. Let them get in a room and throw questions at each other, throw challenges at each other. What are they going to hear in the marketplace? Let's record them. Let's practice them in those role plays earlier. And let's give them market materials and industry materials that help them answer those questions and deflect the pushback that they know they're going to receive. Again, not from corporate, but from the team doing workshop exercises to get those right. Finally, one of the things is, like we said, the market information. Give them tools that help explain why it makes sense to the customer. In this example, this client, we said, hey, our product, our manufacturer that we're representing is a little bit stronger than your competition. We think that our product lasts longer. And yes, even though we're asking for a premium or asking for a price change, we're going to tell you why that's worth it. So a very simple tool that they input a few boxes, and at the end it gives them an annual savings. It gives them some information about why this makes sense to their business, so that again, you're allowing the buyer or the procurement agent to go back to the organization and talk about why they're still winning, why this makes sense, why they were a good negotiator. Give them tools and evidence to help them look good in their company. So that was all we do in terms of preparing to actually change prices in the marketplace. And that can be done at any time, either with your manufacturer's changes or just over time as you negotiate changes or do reviews. But what's really important is that will degrade over time. You want to make sure that you're giving them the tools to measure and be aware and understand what's going on after the fact. And what we find is that about half of the reps really get on board through what we did, really do best practices. A quarter of them are engaged, and a quarter of them are nodding. You know, they're there in the meetings, but in the end, they still don't have the confidence to go to the marketplace and break old habits. So this measure phase is important for all of them, because we find out there might be systematically we accidentally didn't raise these prices or change these prices. But for the last quarter that weren't really engaged, this is where you're going to really engage them. So what we would suggest is build simple dashboards to give to the reps of how they're performing. And often this performance scorecard compares them to their peers or compares them to the market. So how much price increase are they achieving compared to the other groups, compared to what they said they were going to do earlier when they customized their approach. So again, there was already buy-in. They already set the prices of the individual customer product, even though we recommended them. And now we're measuring how we're doing versus those so we can have conversations. Simple visuals. Then you give them specifics. For example, this client, the average price was going along right here in the middle of this chart on the left-hand side. And then it's kind of hard to see, but there's a black dot, that the price went down from $55 per unit down to $49. Maybe that was the right decision. But just tracking on the right-hand side, just seeing that and asking questions brings a whole new level of accountability and questions and understanding that people realize that I really got to make sure that I'm thoughtful about this, and now I'm accountable that if I did that, I need to earn the volume, or I need to do something, or I need to protect the business, instead of things that just aren't visible to the organization. So again, monthly dashboards that show them their performance and the outliers that are not achieving plan. And then finally, you got to put together rewards and incentives, right? This isn't about, normally sales teams, believe it or not, actually want to help the business. They want to win, not only their individual pocketbook, but the company's success. And so what we always say is in the beginning, be positive. Let them earn rewards that both in recognition. We want the executive team to discuss this at a high level, to highlight the people that are doing great, to make it a really positive experience for the people that are engaged, and be a part of those sessions. And maybe give them financial incentives that are just upside initially, just small spiffs or wins or things that they get a piece of it. It might be as simple as if they get commission and they implement a price increase, we just show them the improvement to their commission that will happen just if they achieve it. Or we had a client right now that just simply implemented a handling and service charge, right, for their business distributor. And all we showed simply was the couple $1,000s that the rep could make by just implementing the policy that was out there in the marketplace, and we had terrific response. And then of course, the stick part is you do want to closely monitor those underperformers, show them compared to their peer groups, start trying to break those paradigms, and help them go account by account, determine how they can really address this, and why didn't they change the price the way they said they were going to. So in the end, our goal, and we measure this at the end of all the processes before we go live, we simply ask each rep in a non-assuming way, maybe just a peer or a manager, do you really feel like you're confident that we can achieve this price increase, that we can do this? And you'd be amazed by going the beginning of this meeting what I showed, to this process, how many reps their confidence gets transformed. In the end, they feel confident that they can go in. And my suggestion to you is, it doesn't matter the model, it doesn't matter the approach. The biggest driver to being successful with a price increase in the marketplace is if your reps are confident when they walk in and have their chins up. And that's why it's not about the science, it's about the engagements of them throughout, and then supporting them through the process. So with that, after 30 minutes of straight talking, what we'd like to do now is open it up to questions for folks and get feedback from yourselves.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Just a reminder, as Ryan said, we've left a good amount of time for questions. And so to ask a question, just type it into that chat window on the lower left corner of your webcast window and hit the return key, and we'll get to it as they come in. So the question that I have to start with you for Ryan is, back on slide 25, the beyond manufacturing price increases, there was a question that came in about how does that incorporate the historical distributor's product mix sold for that manufacturer? Is that included in what's realized?
Yes. So if I'm on slide 25 now, I believe. So what this normally is exactly, if Eaton's going for a 5% price increase, what we would do is Eaton might actually be differentiating their increase by the different products that they sell to market. So we would be going to the market with a differentiated price increase as well. And the mix that you're selling would obviously drive how much of a price increase your cost and what you should be targeting. But what we're suggesting is that we're going to measure the historical volumes that you have and the go forward to understand the mix impact of this. But when you look on the right-hand side, that 4.9% in the Eaton example, what we want to do is we want to pick certain products that we think are less sensitive in the marketplace and raise prices maybe on those tail or D items more than what was announced, so that we can actually achieve more and get closer to the 5% target that we're going for overall.
Great. So you've talked a little bit about how it takes some time to get some of these initiatives or to see the results. How do you maintain the gains after the first year of an implementation?
This is a journey. So most folks will go in and do a training or do a workshop or bring all their reps in, and they think that the project's over. We'd suggest that just like purchasing or just like supply chain or just like other sales skills, this is something to practice over time. So first you're going to need to have a system that you can actually measure your business and report on it ongoing so that you can see what's working, what's not, and make changes. And then the best businesses out there will have a couple times a year at sales trainings, they'll start practicing these kind of role plays, not just for price but for other topics. And then once or twice a year they'll have a formality around training and best practices. And over time that will get more and more sophisticated beyond what we even showed today.
So on slide 10, you mentioned relative price score. Could you just give us a little bit of information about what you mean there?
Yes. Let me move to slide 10 and I'll show everybody. I think it was slide 13, yes. So what you're going to see here is each dot is a customer. Usually in most businesses, each customer doesn't buy all the same products as another customer. So it gets more difficult to compare margin or price because they just might buy certain products that have higher prices or have higher margins. So what we're doing in this example is let's pretend that customer buys 10 products. What we're doing is on each product we're seeing how their price or margin compares to their peer group. So maybe on product 1 they have a nice price, good margins on product 1. And maybe on products 2 through 6 though, they're actually below their peer group and have a lower price or lower margin. So what we're doing is to be able to compare a basket of goods, we're comparing all the products and giving them a relative score of the products they buy so that we can actually assess how that customer is doing in terms of price and margin without the effect of mix.
Okay. So should the cost increase percentage be adjusted by the margin percentage historically achieved to maintain the same per unit?
Yeah, so I think this question's around, they're asking is, do you target price increases to achieve percentages or gross profit dollars? And that's a good question. And typically it depends on the business, but normally we're looking for both. We're normally going to need to raise price enough that we maintain our margin percent, which will probably be greater than the gross profit dollars. That's important because year over year over year, you don't want your margin percentages to decline. So that's why a lot of businesses, if I jump to, let me see where that is. A lot of businesses get away with, or they think they're getting away with, increasing the same amount as the manufacturer, what their cost increases are doing, but they realize less because they're probably okay on a gross profit dollar basis, but their margins then are trending down over time, and they say, hey, the market is causing this. What we'd suggest is we got to find ways through waterfall, through other non-price elements or non-price per unit elements, or higher realization or targeting, like we said, to achieve the percentage as well as the gross profit dollars.
So how do you know if you should be following the manufacturer's price increase? What are some of the signals?
Yeah, that's a good question. Whoever asked that. So there's a number of different things. Often where you have to follow a manufacturer is knowing the marketplace because that manufacturer has communicated and established a list price in the marketplace. In that case, it's probably more difficult to not follow them on the high moving items where the published price from the manufacturer is known. But what we find is most distributors, that is not on all products or not on all suppliers, and they too often focus on the manufacturer's increase rather than the distributor, what their opportunity is to do. So something like, the other thing is what market are you selling into? A lot of times OEMs are okay, but if you sell into like the contractor market, they're probably using your manufacturer's increase as something to estimate jobs, but that's an area where you might not have the same opportunity to change as you do other markets.
Okay. So switching gears just a little bit, can you talk a little bit about the role that foreign exchange plays in determining whether you should adjust the price?
Yeah, a lot of companies want to earn the same, have the same earnings no matter what's going on in foreign exchange. So what we suggest is that it's more about the market dynamics that are going on than the foreign exchange rates. So it depends on if the competition and you are manufacturing, if your raw materials are coming in into that market, or if you're importing and exporting. So if you're importing and exporting in your competition as well, we typically see people pass through foreign exchange price increases because of foreign exchange successfully and easily. But if you have a disadvantage that your competition is manufacturing in that region, then it's hard to justify those increases. So that's where we try to get creative and do other waterfall elements. Again, instead of just pushing through a price increase, go in and try to adjust other sources of price leakage.
So you mentioned bringing in raw materials, but we've seen a lot of volatility in some of the raw material costs across sectors. How do you apply this methodology with the volatile raw materials prices, particularly when they're decreasing so much?
Yeah, we would say that we want prices to change. When the raw material costs are going up or down, that's opportunity. So the key is, can we have prices go down slower than costs go down? So if costs are going down quickly, we may have to react to the marketplace, but we can delay those or lower magnitude. So either costs going up or down is a positive thing when you're managing price well. So look at the scatter. Let's pretend that prices are going down rapidly and you're getting pressure in the marketplace to lower your prices. Which dots would you, as a manufacturer, want to slow down or push back on the price declines? So if I have this upper middle dot in the very top come to me and very strongly suggest that I'm high priced and I need a reduction, I'm probably much more likely than the dots at the very bottom that are very low in the marketplace. I'm probably going to either not give them a reduction to start trying to normalize them, or a much lower one. So again, we use the same concepts of just defending price as we do when we're raising.
Okay. So you have a lot of data in your presentation, a lot of different charts, a lot of different ways to look at the data. And so that requires some analytical process to get to the heart of everything. What kind of tools do distributors need in order to really access this type of information?
Yeah, we do believe you need tools, but every company nowadays is on some kind of ERP system where you're electronically invoicing your customers. So what we would suggest is you simply take all your transactions that you've had in the last couple of years and you break them into simple buckets and just look for, hey, let's simply do customer types, put them in segments, and product types, put them in segments, and then calculate, we'd be happy to help you, but calculate price change over time in each of those segments. Or scatters like this. Just simply calculate your relative price score across. It doesn't have to be complicated. I mean, most businesses, even large ones, can start off with simple models, simple visuals, and then once you get buy-in and momentum, yes, it probably makes sense to invest in some tools that are scalable, that can give all kinds more analysis. But the key is start off with simple visuals that work for the business and build from there. At a transaction level, every business can output transactions. Just create a scatter, create a trend chart with your transactions.
Does it require, in your experience, any special training to be able to use the type of information that they're getting, going into your training section there?
Yeah, I mean, you need to have a point person in your organization. What happens is, even though pricing is the strongest lever, it's usually the most underutilized because everyone points at each other. Right? Finance wants one thing, operations wants another, sales wants another, marketing wants another. You need to create a center of who is the quarterback. Yes, they're going to have to get all those folks' input and buy-in. But who is the center quarterback to make pricing excellence strong at your business? And they do have to have both the ability to communicate effectively, to do what we did today, and either them or somebody in their team to build that simple analytics to speak. Because if you go in with a hypothesis, if you go in with case studies, you're not going to get the buy-in. You need to show the organization their data. The data speaks in these kind of visuals.
So here's another question for you. Is this all of this information, is it applicable if the sales team doesn't have pricing authority?
Yeah, that's a common question we get is should the sales team have pricing authority? Should they not? What we'd suggest is that every rep in the end is representing your company to the customer. So if they don't have their chin up and have confidence, if they just walk in and say, even if they don't have authority, walk in and say, yeah, corporate's making me do a price increase, then you're going to get a lot more pushback. So no matter what their level is of authority, from none to having full price authority, we'd suggest you still have some kind of process that you're doing what we talked about today, because they influence. That's where you get your market information from, and they absolutely influence the amount of pushback you're going to get. And that's why you'll see certain reps, almost all their customers push back, and other reps only have a few exceptions. We actually measure that typically and say, hey, the reps that rarely come in and ask for exceptions, we almost always grant them because we know that they're real in the marketplace. Other squeaking wheel reps, right, we need to learn how to coach them and train them because we know that they're not walking in there with their chin up and confident.
So it sounds like there needs to be more focus on providing management with some training skills as well as training the sales team.
That's right. The management has to be the leaders in this process. So if you go in and you have a really good sales manager, but the vice president of sales or the leader of the business isn't bought in that there might be opportunity in this scatter diagram that we're looking at, it's going to be tough. So the first thing is might take some small wins, take a small segment of customers or small segment of products, or in a waterfall take freight policy, and show the opportunity without the world collapsing that, hey, we actually got some price lift here. We got 1% more than we have in the past. Wow, that's a lot of money. What else could we do? So a lot of times that's needed to get buy-in at the executive level so they stand up as leaders to the organization and reward the people that are actually doing a good job in this area, because you already have some that are.
We have another question that came in, and it's, do you believe that measuring price elasticity based on transaction data would be instrumental in differentiation of price increases?
Again, another good question. What happens a lot of times is people want to see true elasticity, meaning if I raise price 2%, I should get this change in volume. What we find in the B2B world is that's very difficult to measure, and probably not the way it works. It's more like that cliff we showed earlier, is you don't know. Let me try to find that. On the left-hand side of this screen, you might not know if you're a B or C, and you don't know exactly where D is, meaning if you raise price more, you'll lose volume. But we can typically tell through analytics if we're close or not, or enough. So if we're at point C, if we think we're somewhere in the point C, we're not going to, and we think 7% is the right number, we might only go 3 or 4 or 5 because we're going to take a step, learn from it, assess, and then go from there. So yes, we're going to pay attention to volume trends. We're going to see if there's correlations with price changes, but rarely do we ever see that. What we find is that most B2B companies are much more about relationships and about not taking too much risk than the retail space that us as consumers walk in and we think there's a lot more elasticity because it's easy to compare pricing. It's easy to compare offerings at the retail store, at a grocery store or a Walmart. It's very difficult to do that in the B2B. So we think measuring true elasticity is more difficult.
Is there any impact from online distributors now with Amazon getting into the space, with Grainger, with a lot of the other online players? Are you seeing, in your experience with your customers, more ability or more trying to apply that price comparison across these products?
Yeah, another good question. It's a very hot topic right now as more and more products you can find on the web. Typically most industries, it's still a very small portion of sales, but at least it's bringing more awareness. And what we're finding is it doesn't influence, it is important in some places on some products, but it's normally overstated the importance of it. But where it is important, we actually find the Graingers and the other folks like that typically have very healthy margins, and often we can leverage those price points that they're publishing to show that we're quite competitive or that we have actually room to grow. And we do use that competitive information. But I'll tell a real quick story. So obviously we're a price consulting firm that has technology, and we recently went and was hiring a person from Amazon. And so one of the things we were excited about was to really learn about the sophisticated approach that Amazon is taking to set pricing. If you ever look at it, the prices even on a commodity product change up and down very dramatically over the course of time. And what we found was that they were in the pricing department of Amazon, and really what was happening was Amazon was literally just scraping the web, deciding how much they wanted to discount off of other people on the web, and setting their price. So there was no sophistication of elasticity. There was no sophistication of demand, even though they claimed to be very sophisticated. They were literally just had a strategy of how to price compared to the competition as a market leader, and their profitability varied greatly based on what the competition was doing on the web, and they ended up being a follower. So don't get caught up that those folks are too sophisticated. We do want to track them. We do what we call web scraping, so we typically for our clients will watch and trend that information, but don't overreact to it.
Okay. So when implementing a price change initiative, what kind of expected improvements can you have?
So earlier we talked about companies that normally get 40% of the price increase that they believe they achieved. I would say some of the best companies are in the 60%. So meaning if they were going for a 5% price increase, they're achieving 2 to 3%. What we'd suggest is we don't want a smart approach. Instead of 5, you might go for 5.5 or 5.75 because the tail items, the tail products, the places you have competitive advantage, you're going to learn on how to get more. But the real lift is that you're going to go get 80% of what you're targeting rather than 40 or 60. So it's very common to be targeting a 2% lift over what the normal process would be. And the benefit of that 2% we kind of showed in the beginning, let's pretend it's a $100 million manufacturer or distributor. All right? I'm going to jump back to the slide of the P&L. Sorry, it's taking me a second to get there. Right? It might be only 2% top line, but it flows all the way down the bottom line, and is often, in this example with this client, was a 25% gain in the bottom line.
With this, I mean, across sectors we can see several different things, but do these results apply across sectors? Do you see kind of the same results regardless of which sector a distributor is operating in?
Yes, certainly. We have clients anywhere from distributing, corrugated cardboard to very sophisticated products, and we still find that no matter how involved the company is in terms of pricing or commercial presence, a 2% gain is a conservative opportunity for them to go after. So the best companies are looking for strong leadership, which is sometimes a challenge, right, that they get behind something like this, and that there's a lot of customers and a lot of products. When that pattern takes place, not to mention market leadership, if they're a market leader, there's usually even a lot more opportunity. But if there's a lot of customers, a lot of products, a lot of complexity to the business, then the opportunity is even larger.
So what are some of the biggest challenges that you've seen with getting the buy-in from the leadership?
Well, often, the business only hears about when they're too high, and sometimes we are. Sometimes the prices are too high or two things. That's why you saw in the example even we lowered some prices. So what we got to realize is that we're only told the downside. So some leaders don't feel like there's an opportunity. They're already pricing the market, or every client we have feels like the competition is the one causing prices down. So what we've got to realize is that we probably have a little bit of ownership in it ourselves, and there's probably some places we're too high and some places we have opportunities. And it's probably worth the reps to spend some time and really think about these topics and learn and get trained, even if they have lots of experience in the industry or selling.
Okay. Well, and we have time for one more question. So do you have any best practices that you can share for introducing new surcharges?
Yeah, I gave an example earlier of handling fees or returns or stock. The key there is to keep them very simple, to not do too many of them that you feel like it's an airline now and that we're charged for a soda. So often companies already have policies, so we're going to want to go out and actually make sure they're best practices, compare them to the industry, and do them right and actually charge them. And the other thing is go for it. Don't slowly go in and roll it out over time or give lots of authority. Go, explain it, own it, and drive it forward and go for a high compliance right away. You'll get noise early on, and then it'll be a lot less noise than people expect, and then nobody will remember it 3 or 4 or 5 months beyond. The painful parts are when folks try to ease into things, and then they're fighting customers for a year about a topic, and it's like a black eye.
Great. Well, let's end with that question. Once again, Ryan, thank you very much. And we'd like to thank Insight to Profit for its sponsorship of this program today, as well as its strong support for research and educational programming on key wholesale distribution trends. As I mentioned before, we will send everyone a link to access this recording of this program. Please feel free to share it with your colleagues, and we'll also have a DVD of the program available later today at mdm.com. So thank you everyone so much for joining us, and this concludes our program.